All right, everybody, welcome to the Scho-Zone. It is your host, Ryan Schofield. I'm recording this on a Saturday morning from my fair to middling apartment here in Albany, New York. Just wanted to get another episode out there. Really still trying to work on this whole thing. Thanks you for anybody who's been listening and watching and any feedback we've been getting. Again, emails at the Scho-Zone at the Scho-Zone podcast at gmail.com. I don't really check it. Anyways, gonna maybe start doing morning type rants because that's when I'm actually clear and can commit to something. I'm at least up and at it. One that I had teased before in a short was I wanted to discuss conversation. We have nothing to do for 2 weeks with if you're a football fan or if you're a sports fan, really. So the big to do has been we have to obviously compare Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. I'm really curious again when this whole thing started as far as we have to always be looking at the greatest ever. I remember Michael Jordan. I was a kid when Michael Jordan retired, and when he retired, he was the greatest of all time. And it wasn't ever going to be who is the next Jordan, or it wasn't ever, oh, he's as good as Jordan. It was always, oh, maybe this guy can be the next Jordan. Maybe this guy. That was the operative word. Maybe this guy. Like Grant Hill was somebody that was thought to be maybe he could be the next Michael Jordan. Kobe Bryant kind of was actually. Then LeBron came along and LeBron was just, it wasn't even necessarily Jordan it was compared to. I mean, that's always the benchmark that you were, but he was just this is an amazing talent and we'll see where it goes. The Jordan was the natural, I think, because he wore 23. I always thought that LeBron compared more to Magic Johnson with his game style. But anyways, this was a conversation about Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Um, Patrick Mahomes has played 6 years. It is the most impressive 6 year start, at least as far as the accolades. It was actually funny that there's been now because there's this whole war that's broke out the way the social media does. Obviously, you have your camps, Team Mahomes, Team Brady. Me, I am on Team Brady just because I think it's the right side to be on right now. Talk to me in 10 years. Maybe I have a different side to this one. But it's funny how it's really what it seems to be is it's Chiefs fans and then the non-fans, but it does seem to be a Chiefs fans, Patriots fans thing. It's really weird when you're finding yourself on the same side as Patriots fans. They're not exactly Boston sports fans. Not always a group you want to be affiliated with, especially when you see the St. Louis Cardinal logos here. It's always funny when I get to tell somebody I hate the Red Sox, but it doesn't mean I like the Yankees. Don't really like them either, actually. But they've actually done. I mean, I don't have any charts. I'm not gonna. I don't have. I'll eventually work on the ability to post some things, but really, I'm just not gonna share other people's tweets with you. But it was funny that because right now it's the longevity factor. He doesn't have the ring, so that we just have to say that oh well, his best has been better than their best. So it's funny that someone put us side by side, not using per game or your conventional yards metrics, when evaluating football now, we can't look at stats. All right. You can take the best quarterback from the 80s or 90s and put him up against an average, maybe even below average quarterback. I mean, Jameis Winston's numbers are unheard of in a season that he did a couple years ago. He threw for 5,000 yards. He had 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. That's would have been all of those. I mean, the 30 interceptions wouldn't have even been that crazy. I don't even think with some seasons I've looked at. I mean, it would have been probably led the league for sure. But 30 touchdown passes, I always will. I'll tackle that one. I get ahead of myself a little bit on these things. That's why I need to have somebody around me to kind of keep me from myself. Maybe I'll get to get some coffee, relax. Nobody's watching anyways right now. Actually, I'm not even doing this one live. I'm recording this one. But a season like that, if you had that season in the 1980s, I mean, yeah, they would have definitely had the issues with the turnovers, but 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. Only Marino was doing that, which is actually another point I brought up is Marino threw for 5,000 yards in 1984, 5,084 yards in 1984. It wasn't until 2008, I want to say, that somebody got to 5,000 yards. So for 24 years, 5,000 yards was untouchable. And I think that since 2008, it's been done like 13 times or something. So once a year, sometimes even twice a year, but it's the point of we're in the steroid era of the passing game, that's for sure. But someone was looking at Mahomes's 5 year run, and they used a bunch of like metric based numbers, not necessarily ones that I buy into or even really understand, but they're ones I hear constantly. Uh, tossed around the interwebs by the analytics community and whatnot, but like EPA, shit like that. And Mahomes was not in the top of any of them. In fact, actually, even win-loss record, you took his 5 year stretch, which did not include this year, but the first 5 years, and then there was like a 5 year sample of Peyton Manning and a 5 year sample of Tom Brady, and Mahomes was like only better in one statistic. Um, and this is I don't want this to turn into a Patrick Mahomes bash session. The guy is great, but when there's levels to this thing as far as you need to climb up the ladder, so to I would think, um, because what I kind of need to look at is that what if his career, this used to be a question used to be asked whenever we brought up somebody as a Hall of Famer when we were kids. What if his career ended tomorrow? I mean, 6 years, it's an amazing 6 year career. I think that they want, I mean, we give people Terrell Davis shit for only having 5 years or something. And he was, when he was out there, was as good as anybody. Terrell Davis, the running back from the Broncos. But the thing is that let's suppose, all right, Mahomes wins this Super Bowl, gets his third Super Bowl, and then never wins one ever again. Well, that's, I think, going to do something tremendous for him because we're real big prisoners of what is the last taste in our mouth. I mean, honestly, until Tom Brady won that Super Bowl in Tampa, there wasn't he wasn't for sure the GOAT. That was the one when we actually moved him in Montana into different conversations. When he got the one in Tampa, which he also won over the Chiefs, they actually just finally it settled the conversation. But up until that point, it was still up for debate for a bunch of different reasons. I mean, because obviously Tom Brady, was responsible for all the cheating that was going on. I That'll always come up. We'll be curious to see. I mean, hey, who knows? The way that some people are talking on the internet right now, in a couple of years, we're going to find out that the Chiefs weren't really that good and that this was just an NFL sham job. But I'm not one of those people, by the way. A little more concentration juice. But I'm even thinking, just all I can do is go through my own memories and try to figure out. I mean, things are different in this present day versus the beginning of Brady's career. For example, I am recording with this you on my laptop right now, and I'm going to be able to post this. It used to be for somebody like me to get their opinion out on camera and into a microphone. You actually had to have some like bona fide talent. Somebody had to say, "Hey, you're allowed to do this." Now I can just put it out there, and if you want it, that's cool. If not, whatever. I'll live to fight another day. But I don't even recall when Brady's career started off. I mean, didn't he win like three Super Bowls in his first couple of years? Um, I don't recall that being a conversation coming up. It was just starting up. The way that I remember it was that, hey, this guy's off to a tremendous start of his career. At the time, everyone still thought Peyton Manning was the actual better quarterback. So see there. I mean, I think it's actually hilarious now, and I don't remember the conversation happening, but Tom Brady won the first Super Bowl, which, by the way, he was not even like, I think people forget about the week leading up to that. Drew Bledsoe really got them to that Super Bowl game because Brady got injured. And if you look at the play, that was back when, and probably good that they got rid of the rules. But if you see the play that Brady got injured against the Steelers, I have to guess that the safety that was on the blitz, I believe it was Carnell Lake, was deliberately trying to rip Tom Brady's ankle apart. But Bledsoe came in, go to the Super Bowl. The next year, the Patriots did not make the playoffs. I don't recall there being this, what would happen now is that we would have the Brock Purdy conversation, which I don't know what that guy's done to deserve a bunch of this other than, yeah, he's in over his head in the situation that he's in, but he doesn't exactly look, I don't know. I don't know. This is not going to be about Brock Purdy, but I think that he gets a really, really bad rap, and he's going to do some bad things. He's going to do some good things, but he's in the Super Bowl and a lot of other quarterbacks are not. But where I'm going with this, yeah, I don't think that Tom Brady was, the conversation was not so much there. It was really actually more about Belichick at that point in time because of the team he put around him. And I was able to pull this sixth rounder and get all of this, accomplished. In reality too, in hindsight, Tom Brady, I mean, it's not like he was literally came from nowhere. He just was in a weird spot in college, but I mean, he's had the tools. But anyways, where I'm going is that he didn't start off, he won out of the gates, but there was not always this gate thing, this goat thing. I mean, shit, I remember when I was even younger, the Cowboys, and This has actually been something looking through. No team ever won Super Bowls more convincingly as far as their road through the playoffs than the 95 or the Cowboys dynasty. Troy Aikman being the quarterback of that team, it's funny now how people in this era look back to what Troy Aikman did and they see the stats and they're like, oh, we didn't really do much. I just kind of go on that Troy Aikman was one of the top recruited kids coming out of high school, was the number one draft pick coming out of college. And he was also for a team. The Cowboys were 1-15 the year that they drafted him. And then a few years later, they're a dynasty. Granted, they were significantly aided by the Herschel Walker trade, but you're going to notice a theme in quarterbacks that have won multiple Super Bowls. They're going to have some heavy assistance. Don't get where that one suddenly came against you. I mean, all good football players, if you look at the greatest football players of all time, they probably had another great player somewhere around them, or they weren't just the one player on the team. But Brady actually, I mean, he was where I would say would be the test of this. And if Mahomes can do this, uh, Brady actually was knocked off the mountaintop a few times and had to climb his way back up. I remember there being a uh, Monday night football game that they played against the Saints when the Saints were running hot and you couldn't win a game in the Kingdom or not Kingdom, the Superdome with Drew Brees. And I mean, they got blown out. And I remember this is the end of the Patriots dynasty. I heard this is the end of the Patriots dynasty and two different eras of my career or my life. And yet they came back to win more Super Bowls or at least appear in more of them. Um, I think that the Chiefs, I mean, let's face it, this was the lowest quality. I mean, the best defense that the Chiefs had, but the skill pieces around Mahomes, this was the worst that they've had in his tenure. And I don't see it getting better anytime soon because, again, he's got that massive contract now. Now, there's no more valuable assets to an NFL team right now than a quality quarterback on a rookie contract. This is the first year that Mahomes has been being on that contract. Notice the talent around him going away. Travis Kelce, again, it's he is the idea that they can only slow play him into getting into the playoffs or that, oh, now he's, now it's playoffs not matter. Yeah, no, they have to keep him upright. I mean, he's 30 some odd years old and he's caught a lot of balls in the middle of the field. And when guys like that who aren't easy to bring down, they don't take the regular hits that everyone does. It's not crazy that he's aging out a little bit. I mean, he's on the decline a little bit. Rashee Rice is an up and coming receiver, but do we think that he's going to be, do we think he's going to be one of the goats of the league? Or they, I hate them using that term, but the Chiefs, this was all, I mean, look at what they put in talents around them before the season started. And that was before they had signed Chris Jones. Now they have to pay Chris Jones as well, too, who seems to be worth it. So, I mean, the defense is certainly the strength of them. I'd imagine that those guys in the secondary, those lockdown corners, they got to get paid at some point too. But that portion, this run of the roster, there is going to be the rebuild of it. Andy Reid, as long as he's still there, I think they still have the chance of there. But now life around you has gotten a little more difficult. I'm thinking back to the Dan Campbell speech that he gave to his team about getting to the water. And then when you get in the water, there's a couple teams in the shallow end and they're going to, but those teams in the shallow end, well, the Chiefs are one of those teams, but now there's actually going to be a bunch of teams coming at them. For example, they now are going to have a worthy rival in their division potentially with now they're getting Jim Harbaugh in the division with the Chargers. And this is going to be now we can really evaluate Justin Herbert, I guess, because does he show the tools? They're looking like he's as good as, they say is absolutely, but hasn't have the results. Is Brandon Staley that responsible for it? I do say that you are really, really a matter of your circumstances. And if your coach is that bad, then yeah, maybe this will be what turns that around. What I'm getting at is that you're not going to be always guaranteed the division now, but perhaps, or it's going to be more and more road playoff treks potentially than you do at the home. And I'm not saying that they can't do that. I'm saying that these are some challenges that are coming up there. Now, I even go one further if that's with the way that we're setting this conversation up of that. I mean, where I started this off, where I teased this in a short is Tom Brady has had one season as retired. You need to have four more, and in the fifth year, then he can be inducted in the Hall of Fame. And that was always a very key thing, is that, 5 years was how we determine whether someone's in the Hall of Fame. Right now, when somebody retires, we just say they need to walk straight into the Hall of Fame. There is, the most consensus of people that are, but usually I think that the reason that that existed was that we wanted to be able to process and, have some time removed. There are guys that I thought were Hall of Famers that when I see their name, in baseball, I'm a huge baseball guy, like I said, there are some names that come up after their fifth year, and I forgot that I don't want to say I forgot they existed, but I forgot that them being in the Hall of Fame was something that came up. It's like, oh yeah, I don't feel the same way I do about that guy anymore. Again, I'm not saying we're not going to have this about any of the guys we're discussing right now, but can Tom Brady, at least when he gets inducted into Canton, can at least be that he is the undisputed greatest quarterback of all time, at least just for that year? Now, if Mahomes has won every Super Bowl between now and then, I get it. But I do think that Tom Brady has earned the respect that maybe we can just wait before we try and strip him of this title that he worked at, because again, he wasn't handed it overnight, and he really, not until the end of like year 20 was it even for sure his, because there was always going to be the yeah buts. It seemed like there still is the yeah buts. I'm reading about them on the internet all the time, but I mean, some other things of that we've set this, so now if somebody can take over this goat thing within the time frame that Mahomes has, well, you're setting yourself up on a dangerous pace. I mean, again, what Mahomes has done is fairly unprecedented. I gotta say it's unprecedented. Maybe you should do some better research on that. But he's having success unlike anybody at this point in time. Well, let's just say that CJ Stroud. I mean, this is just let's just throw this one out there. Again, hypotheticalville, but just as an example of what the argument that we're agreeing to is. CJ Stroud drafted in the top five to a cellar dweller team. This is another thing I say with Mahomes too. There was a reason I mentioned that Troy Aikman had a team that came from nothing. Mahomes and Brady, both of them have the luxury of that. Their teams were not, they were just a sniff away. I mean, Alex Smith was an MVP candidate the year prior to Mahomes. Now, we know that Alex Smith isn't that great, but his quarterback coach, Andy Reid, is pretty good, or his head coach was pretty good. But they were a winning team, and a good quarterback got them over the hump. That is going to speak to the testament of Patrick Mahomes, is that he got them over that hump, that place that Alex Smith was never going to bring them. Like I said, Aikman was on a 1-15 team. Yes, they did get the benefit of being able to draft like 2 years worth of Pro Bowlers from a Herschel Walker trade, but he still started at the bottom, rose all the way to the top. So when CJ Stroud, a guy like him, comes in and he turns the Texans around, gets into the playoffs, competes for a half in a playoff game, which is, hey, he did more than Lamar Jackson did against, that against Mahomes. He did just whatever. You saw where he's going there. But let's just say that now, I mean, that was not a team that was set for success. They actually lost a lot of players along the way this year. Now, let's say that they build this up. They have that valuable asset of the rookie contract. Let's just say that, hypothetically speaking, that, somehow CJ Stroud finds himself ripping off 2 Super Bowls in the next 3 years. Are we now already going to start replacing Mahomes in this conversation with, well, CJ Stroud? I mean, you just see where I'm going at. Like, let's let the careers play out, because again, if Mahomes was to win 3 Super Bowls, if he wins this one tomorrow or this upcoming week, and was to then never win a Super Bowl again and just had a regular Mahomes like career, maybe appeared in another Super Bowl or two, but didn't win, I don't think that we're going to have that GOAT conversation quite as strong. It's going to matter the momentum at the end of his years. So yeah, you could potentially have another, and let's just say, let's say Caleb Williams is actually as good as they say he is, and he comes in and he starts ripping off Super Bowls. Is Caleb Williams already the GOAT now? I mean, like, this is what we've set ourselves up for. Let's just watch the games and enjoy them, and then, a couple years down the road, we can discuss it. It makes for, interesting barroom banter sometimes, but I guess it's at least almost refreshing, but to not have to hear a LeBron Jordan conversation, like I said, but getting way ahead of ourselves. And what's even been worse now too is that now people are actually trying to legislate this on like a play-by-play basis, where I'm seeing somebody will post a play that Mahomes made and then say, well, Brady couldn't make this throw. There's always a expression that my father told me, and it was always pertaining to golf, but I would say that we could get the same somewhat out of how stats are out of sports. The question isn't how, the question is how many. Basically, I don't care how you got it. What did you do is kind of because again, the resumes kind of speak for yourself there. But you know, in golf, a par is a par. Doesn't matter how it happens. Um, so that's what I have there. You should probably just pay a little more attention to what happens on the road. I guess another thing too is that maybe this would be a good way of doing this. This is actually where I now things are starting to tie in my head a little bit. Maybe we should kind of really establish sort of the hierarchy or like the tier system that Bill Simmons did in his Hall of Fame book of basketball. But the player that I think Mahomes should be compared to the most, and it's crazy that people would possibly look at this as an insult, even, but not even just based on what they've accomplished, but based on the style they their play. You can now, this is something I've been doing. I'm doing this right now. I'm watching while I'm recording this. YouTube, I'm a fucking nerd. YouTube has you can watch the original broadcasts of like any football game that was ever broadcasted, or they have a bunch of them. Right now, I'm watching the 1977 divisional round playoffs between the Los Angeles Rams and the Dallas Cowboys. Why? Because I'm really trying to gain a perspective of where we've come from, what the game used to look like, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just it once you watch one of them, they kind of start thinking you want to watch them. So if I have it on, it's usually just background noise for me while I'm doing shit like this. But anyways, if you watch an actual game from the 1980s and you watch John Elway and Patrick Mahomes, they're the same player to me. They're very, very, very similar as far as they have that. See, they used to call it a scrambling quarterback, not a running quarterback. And then you obviously sometimes would take off. But if you watch the way that Elway would used to buy time or in the pocket, the way that or outside the pocket, I should say, the way Mahomes does, and then having that great arm strength and great arm talent, they're very similar players. And historically, as I did just mention, Elway didn't win until he got the help with Terrell Davis. Um, I think that, and especially for the younger people, they really need to understand the landscape of football in the 1980s. The NFC was so much better than the AFC. If you look at all of just go look at any of the Hall of Famers from those eras, a lot of them coming from, I mean, the Giants were a super team, the Niners were the super team. I mean, the Bears only really had the one year that they actually went to and won the Super Bowl, but they were always solid within those years. The 49ers, I mean, really, that's why if you look for the longest time, I think it was like 14 years or something. And the Raiders beat the Redskins in the early 80s. And then until the Packers lost to the Broncos and John Elway, that was, I mean, a lot of the games were blowouts. It wasn't even that close. So Elway, when you look at the fact that he won four AFC, went to four Super Bowls before he won anything, or he was always getting there, and then they were just too outmatched. It's almost like when you watch the national title game and they let the group of five team in and they have to play against Alabama or something. Yeah, cute story, but the road ends here. That was kind of the way that it worked. And then Elway got them over the hump, and then that kind of that was a big deal because honestly, the next year, granted the Falcons upset the Vikings, but for a AFC team to be a heavy favorite in a Super Bowl was unprecedented at that time. And then it kind of resumed the balance of power where now dynasty started in Boston a couple years later, but there was that was a thing. So I do think that he gets a bad rap in the sense of that he was overmatched a lot of the times in the Super Bowls, but he got his teams there. Furthermore, actually, this is winning that championship game is something to me. Making the Super Bowl appearance and then losing when your team is outmatched. It's the games you lose when your team is a 50-50. That's where I'll probably give you the strike on that one. But second here, riveting stuff. I know. But one of the more overrated stats that I've seen in the and it's coming with Brady and with Mahomes is this conference championship game appearances. All right, that sounds like a really, really, really awesome accomplishment. You know what it really means? Okay, it's actually really an extension of the regular season when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. It's a great regular season thing. Because all's in a conference championship appearance means to me is you want a home game. You want a home playoff game against an inferior team. You probably were a double-digit favorite or close to in most of those games. So you doing that and getting to the championship game, I don't see as being, that much of an accomplishment, or at least something in the resume where I look at it, okay, if you went to the Super Bowl, because right now the Mahomes record I think it's 4-2, or no, it's 3-2, 3-2 in those championship games because he lost one to Brady, and he lost one, or yeah, no, either way. Point is that the conference championship game, winning it is something. Just making it there, not so much, because I'm feeling that there's a couple of guys that are escaping me right now. I think Joe Flacco was in a bunch of AFC championship games. I don't see anybody talking about that. I mean, he won a Super Bowl. Again, he won a Super Bowl, but he was on the right team for that. But these are just some things to kind of consider. So, yeah, I think we should have a pecking order. And to be honest with you, too, I mean, that was one of the things, Mahomes, when they were showing some of these clips, you would see Mahomes could never make this throw, or Brady could never make this throw, and they would show Mahomes, doing something acrobatic. And what was funny is when they were showing that play, usually it was Mahomes was missing an open receiver somewhere in the shot and was having to create this amazing play to make a more difficult completion. And it's kind of like, yeah, Tom Brady probably wouldn't have made that throw. He probably would have hit the deep corner route for a touchdown type thing. Um, Again, I think that unfortunately we're looking at least a decade of these conversations, or again, who knows? Maybe the next best things come in the next couple of years. But yeah, I just think we just need to cool our jets a little bit. I mean, then what is it doing? It's filling content. I just did a fucking show on this, or recorded for about a half an hour on a Saturday morning. So clearly people are bothered by it. I'm hypocrite number one right here. I just decided to talk about when I said everyone should shut up. But I guess maybe that's the conversation I want to have, is why we should shut up and give it some time. Um, you know, One of the best ways to never have a bad take is just to not say anything if you don't really know what you're talking about. I could be one of those guys. You could be looking at me going, I'm one, but I don't think it's crazy to think that Tom Brady should be given a few more years as his reign as the GOAT before we really, really start trying to take it away from him. If we want to say Mahomes is on his way, that's one thing, but the conversation has turned into he's already there. For me, it's always going to come down to two things: is that one, again, the head to head with quarterbacks is a weird one, but the fact that Mahomes struggled in his matchups, or was beaten handily in the Super Bowl, that one's going to sting, and that one's going to be a hard one, because I doubt anyone's going to rewatch the game. They're just going to look at the final score. I doubt they're going to know about the injuries to Kansas City or anything that they had during that game. They're just going to look at the final score. What I will say though is I watched the comeback of it again. I had the Patriots in the Super Bowl against the Falcons, and when they were down 28-3, because everybody knew I had a big bet on the Patriots. I didn't want to, be that like completely defiant idiots. I was kind of resort to, hey, I was wrong, because guess what? It happens, all right? When I bet, I'm wrong like fucking, I say 45% of the time, it's probably more. But the fact in my head is, I was like, if they could stop them from scoring, I think they could do this. I think they can do this. When you rewatch that game, that 28-3 comeback, like usually there's a big major swing play that happens in there. I mean, yeah, but like a defensive touchdown or a return or something. No, I mean, they just nickel and dime it, because that game really, even the 20-3 sounds terrible. 28-9 going into the fourth quarter actually makes it sound even more impressive, because they really had to be perfect in the fourth quarter, and they were. And that's kind of going to be the one that I think separates things for me for a while, anyways, is that Mahomes has the opposite. He's blew a 21-3 lead in an AFC championship game, which it's funny that one just seems to have disappeared from everyone's mind space. I don't hear it brought up enough. But if you're in these conversations, then you need to have them brought up, I guess. Um, yeah, that's a big one. But yeah, the fact that a guy could be down 23 and I'm not ready to count him out, that's ultimately my biggest intangible factor, I guess, I have with quarterbacks, is how the way I do it is, I quantify a bunch of things. You can look at stats all you want to, but in the betting space, how I look at things is, how do I feel when I have money on this guy? How do I feel when I have money against this guy? I have not been scared to bet against the Chiefs this year. And that's, again, a lot to do with the guys on the other side or outside of Mahomes. But I have become, I did it quite a few times this year in Arrowhead to success, with the Packers on the money line, with the Bills on the money line, with the Eagles on the money line. Then conversely, I can't win a fucking game that they're playing in the playoffs. Um, I did post a video, which I'm not the best at doing all this stuff, In my channel, if you look on the live, there's a section. I have a prop bet. I believe that the odds are still good on it. I want you to check that one out. It's involves punt returns. That's all I'll say. If you're in DraftKings and the defensive special teams section of props, there's one on there. And if you watch the video, I have a detailed information. It's a lot of ranting and raving like this, no visual graphics. But I think I found myself a winner there, or at least I can say I'm getting the best of the numbers the way I'm looking at it. But I will probably have a couple more sometime next week. Every now and again, I'm probably going to break things up too, as far as, maybe have something a little more personal, maybe a little more social commentary like. I do have one that I will be planning at some point. It was something that was kind of reflected on me. I realized that, people were finishing up dry January, and now we're into February, but there was a conversation I listened to about people with dry January, and, kind of got me thinking of, I really can't believe that I'm in the spot that I'm in right now. That the idea that I'm saying it's probably been 18 or 19 months since I've had a drink is ridiculous for anyone that knew me. I'm shaking right now, but that's not because I haven't had a drink. That's because I just nervous ticks. I need to get a chair that doesn't move around as much. I've realized that doing this while I talk is probably not going to be what's going to catapult me into into primary viewership or anything. But anyways, I'm gonna be probably doing a little more of this. I'm gonna want to do some live streams. I would like to have live so that I can actually get some interaction on there, but it takes a while to build an empire, I guess. Not that I'm going there with it, but really trying to get the viewers. I have some goals in my head. Obviously 500 viewers is a big, or 500 subscriptions is a big number. So if anybody watching this could just tell a friend to just subscribe, makes me feel like I'm doing something, and I'll continue to keep doing this for if you do watch it and like it, or just you got some spare. If you're watching me, you have spare time, okay? You can go and sign up with a burner Gmail account and just give me a like and a subscribe on there. But just tell somebody. I mean, if you ever there's something I do on here that you like or something I should do more of, any constructive criticism, I work for you guys right now. The Scho-Zone podcast at gmail.com. And yeah, you can always interact with me on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, at Sco525. And I look forward to having something more for you in the time leading up. Um, going to be out of football soon, and we're going to be getting very baseball centric in the next month. Big deals in MLB with Corbin Burns getting traded from the Brewers to the Orioles. That's gonna be a fun race this year. I thought the Orioles last year, they were ahead of schedule as far as being as good as they were. I thought they may have been a fringe playoff team last year. I didn't think they were division winning good. But suddenly, when you get a guy like Corbin Burns out there, that's you guys are ready to party now. And what also is nice for the Cardinals is that that's one less thing that they have to worry about in their horrible NL Central division. But I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because now ownership might feel like, oh, that's one less thing we got to do, or they might be that much closer to their default NL Central title and their first round exit in the playoffs. You'll be able to, if you're baseball, you'll definitely be able to enjoy the Scho-Zone in coming months. But I'm going to wrap this up, everybody. So take it easy. Have a good one.